grab a seat this morning. Again, I want to make sure that you're aware you can grab our sermon notes here at bible.com/events/623-815. You can download the sermon notes there and follow right along with everything that we're doing this morning. If you don't have the Bible app, I would encourage you to download that. It's a free app that you can do Bible reading plans. That's what I personally do every day. That's a plan that I read through there. Done that for probably the last 8 or 10 years. It's just it's a great thing because we always have those little devices with us, and so I've always got the Bible with me because of that. You can check those out there. Again, if you can't get it this morning, they will be up for the next 3 or 4 days, so you won't miss out on them. Again, thanks so much for being here as we get ready to conclude our At the Core series. If you've missed any of this time, you can always check it out on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and in the search box, just type in Level 13 Church and it'll pull up all of our stuff. You can go back and take a look at sermons from this series and from other series that we've done as well. But this entire series has been focused on this idea of core values, principles, things that we have that we will call non-negotiables, things that we're going to do. In that very first week, we said that the things that we value, we repeat. Whatever we value, we repeat those things. We do them over and over and over again. We get up and we take a shower. We go through the same routines because there are certain things that we value as people individually. But as a church family, there are other things that we value as a corporate family. And so 3 specific things that we focused on or that we're going to focus on. Today will be number 3. Over the last few weeks. Week 1, we talked about connection. We said that connection with God. And then in week 2, we said connection with one another. We make no apologies for this. We will unapologetically always create space for people to connect with Jesus. Because that is at the core of who we are as followers, as disciples. We have to create space for people to say yes to Jesus. And as a church family, we'll do that every single week. Every time we meet. We're also going to create space for people to connect with one another through groups and through just community involvement, different things that we're doing. And for those of you who maybe weren't here in week 2, if you're interested in leading or hosting or being a part of a small group, if you'll just fill out your Connect card and drop it in the black box on your way out, we'll make sure that we've got all that information compiled. And we're planning on launching some groups later on, maybe the end of July, 1st of August is when we want to roll everything out because I want to make sure we're prepared and we have a training and all that stuff in place before we do. But we want to create space for people to connect with one another and community. We were never created to do life alone. We were created for community. So that's where we went the first 2 weeks. Last week, we talked about worship. And we said that worship is another non-negotiable for us. It's at the core of who we are and what we do. Because worship, as we said last week, is warfare. The song we just sang, this is how I fight my battles. It isn't me fighting physically. It's me fighting in the spirit. And God doing the work. Me worshiping Him, me lifting my hands, lifting my voice and saying, God, you are great. You are awesome. I can't praise you enough. And then there's something that happens in the supernatural that begins to manifest itself in the natural. And we see our battles won. And we didn't have to pick up a finger. We didn't have to fight on our own. We fought spiritually. And so we're always going to create room for worship every week. It's more than just allowing these guys and gals who are just uberly talented to get on stage and use their gifts. That's an added benefit. But it's because it's warfare, man. It's worship is powerful. It does something in the life of a believer. So we're going to create space every week for worship. Now this morning, we're going to look at the final, at the core value. And this particular value is, honestly, it's the most dangerous of the 3. And the reason it's the most dangerous is because it has the potential to take all of the attention off of God and place it on us. We're going to take a look this morning at serving. Now, when we serve in the world and in the culture that you and I call home, isn't it true that it's really easy to slip into that, hey, I'm doing this to get however many likes I can on social media. I'm doing this to see how many people are going to give me a pat on the back for serving, right? That's a natural tendency that we can slide into. I mean, we go hashtag serve day, and just to get people to see what we've done. We make sure that we do things, and so other people are looking at it, and that's not what we're called to do. That's not the kind of life that Jesus calls us to when it comes to serving. So we have to be really careful when it comes to serving, or else we'll put all of the spotlight on us instead of on Jesus. And Jesus talked about the tension that's there. He actually brought it to light in one of the gospel letters, one of the gospel documents that was written by a friend of his named Matthew. Matthew traveled with Jesus, and he heard Jesus teach, and he kind of had an inside scoop into all the things going on in Jesus' life and his world. And he wrote this document. We call it the Book of Matthew. And in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, Jesus is teaching about the tension between serving for the right reason and serving to build ourselves up. If you have your Bible with you, if you have your sermon notes, we're going to go to Matthew chapter 6 first. Then we're going to look at James chapter 2. Then we'll also take a look before the day is over at John chapter 13. But in Matthew chapter 6, I'm going to use the Message paraphrase here. I love how bold and in your face, and it leaves no question what Jesus is talking about here, the way that this was written. So in Matthew chapter 6, verse 1, the Message, here's what it says. Be especially careful when you're trying to be good, so that you don't make a performance out of it. Be especially careful when you're trying to be good, when you're trying to serve somebody else. Be especially careful. It might make for good theater, but the God who made you won't be applauding. It might be something that other people can kind of get excited about and say, oh man, look at you. You did that. That was awesome. But the God who made you won't be applauding. He continues in verses 2 and 3. When you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself, Jesus says. And he continues. You've seen them in action, I'm sure. Play actors, I like to call them. Treating prayer meeting and street corner alike as a stage. Acting compassionate. Look at the language here. Acting compassionate as long as someone's watching. Playing to the crowds. Now, chances are in your life and in mine, we've seen people who've done this. Maybe we've been guilty of doing this. Like I'll go and I'll serve and I'll be involved and I'll do something for somebody else as long as the cameras are rolling. As long as I can take a selfie and I can post it on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and all of those other things. As long as I can get some credibility and people can look at you and they can look at me and they can say, man, look at all the good stuff they're doing. Jesus is talking completely against that. He says, when you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself. Verse 4, he continues, he says, they get applause, true, but that's all they get. When you help someone out, don't think about how it looks. Don't think, is this my photogenic side? Or is this my photogenic side? Which one do I need to have when I'm in the picture? Personally, I don't have a photogenic side, so I don't have to worry about that part of it. Just do it quietly and unobtrusively. Just do it kind of in silence, in secret. That's the way your God, who conceived you in love, working behind the scenes, helps you out. Jesus goes right into the tension and he says, look, there is a gravitational pull towards selfishness and self-centeredness. Even when we're trying to serve somebody else, there's a gravitational pull there that wants us to make it all about us. You and I, as followers of Jesus, must be intentional, not to make it about us, but to do our serving in secret. Jesus calls us to serve in secret as an act of worship to him, not an act of attention seeking for us. He doesn't say, hey, go and make your name famous by how well you serve. Instead, we're instructed, we're commanded, we're told, go and make his name famous. Make him recognizable. Make him known. When we go out and we serve and we pour into somebody else's life, it should never be about me. It should never be about you. It should always be about him. Every single time. But this raises a question. It's an honest question. It's a question that probably has ran through some of our minds, maybe all of our minds at one point in time or another. What's the point? Yes, I know God sees, and that's great. But if I don't get a pat on the back, or as we say in Alabama, if I don't get an attaboy or an attagirl from my serving, then what's the point? I mean, I can love Jesus without getting involved in the serving portion. I can have a relationship with Jesus and not have to worry about serving if nobody's going to know about it anyway. God knows that I love him, and so I don't have to get involved in this whole serving thing. The answer to that question is in a really unlikely place. Jesus' half-brother, a guy named James, didn't believe that he was the Son of God while he was on earth. I mean, can you imagine if you're sitting at home and you're in your room one day and your brother walks in and says, hey, by the way, I'm the Savior of the world. I'm the Son of God. I don't know, I have two brothers. And if either one of them told that to me, I don't know, I would just probably like fall over laughing and just die immediately. I don't know how you could expect James to think he was the Son of God. Like, I live with you, man. I saw you poop your diaper. Like, I watched you. I've been there. I've been a part of your life. How in the world can you say that you're the Son of God? I know whose son you are. He didn't believe he was the Son of God until after he watched him die, and then he saw him alive again. And then usually, if someone can predict their death and resurrection and then fulfill it, you know what? I'm going to believe what they have to say. So you know what? Maybe there's something to this. That's where James found himself. He actually became one of the leaders of the early church. And he wrote probably many letters, but we have one letter that survived antiquity and it made its way into our New Testaments. We call it the Gospel of James, the letter of James, you might want to call it. And in James, this particular document, this letter, this teaching the early church, here's what he had to say about whether or not we need to serve or not. James chapter 2, verse 14, he says, what good is it, brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but you don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of a faith save anyone? Says, what good is it for you to say, hey, I love Jesus, but I'm not going to serve. I love Jesus, but I'm not going to get my hands dirty. I love Jesus, but I'm not going to get involved in the mess and the muck and the junk and the stuff of life that other people are going through. I'm not going to get involved in all that. I love Jesus. That's enough. And James comes along and says, can that kind of faith save anybody? And then he follows it up with the nail in the coffin, so to speak. In verse 26, he says this, just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. Faith is dead without serving, without getting involved. That's what we were created to do. That's what we were called to do, is to serve one another. Jesus is going to have something else to say about that in just a few minutes. But we could sum it up like this. Serving is putting our faith in action. Or if we want to make it specific to what we say around here, serving is always about making Jesus famous. It is always about making Jesus famous. So if serving is the expectation, serving is what you and I are created to do and called to do, how do we do it? We've talked about the why, but we haven't mentioned the what or the how. Within the context of our church family here at Level 13, what does that look like for us? Every weekend gathering that we have, we need servants to pull off. We need servants to make it happen. Every time we do an outreach in the community, we need servants to make it happen. There are men and women who are connected to this church who are on the mission field, and we need servants to help with them to make what God has called them to do happen. So here are a few ways. Here in our local worship gatherings every week, here are just a few things that we could use servants to help with. We need greeters. We need volunteers in children's ministry, in student ministry. We need volunteers to serve on the worship team, audio technicians, video technicians, online technicians, offering servants, custodial servants, safety servants. We need somebody to make the coffee. We need people who are willing to take out the trash. We need folks who are willing to come in and do some things to just make the sanctuary and make the worship area, all the buildings, all those spots look good and ready each week. We need servants every single week. And that's something that you can do, and that's something that I can do here in our local congregation. We also need small group leaders. We need hosts for small groups. We need servants for Vacation Bible School. That's coming up in July, by the way, July 16 through 19. We need outreach servants, people who are willing to go into the community and let people know that there's a God in heaven that loves them and that they're not alone, they're not forgotten. We need people who are willing to go on short-term mission trips and pour into the lives of those who maybe have been affected by weather here in the United States, or maybe it's somewhere overseas and you go and you pour into an area. We need those who are financiers for missions work, because not all of us are gifted to go and be on a mission field, but some of us have deeper pockets than others, and we can help support those who can and have been called to do those things. These are just a few of the options, a few of the ways that we can serve in our local congregation, we can serve in our community, we can serve in our nation and in our world. And if you're not plugged in serving somewhere, let me be the first to encourage you. There's a place for you. There's a place for you to serve. And if you need more information on that, send me an email. Come talk to me. Send me a text message. Grab me by the arm. We'll go grab lunch, have coffee, something. We'll talk through what that looks like, because there's a place for you to serve. And I believe in it so strongly. I want to create places. I want us to create space for serving to happen every single week. Serving is making Jesus famous. Serving is not putting the spotlight on us. It's putting the spotlight on Jesus. Now, I said earlier, Jesus had something specific to say about this. He was really straightforward in Matthew chapter 6. He said, don't be like the play actors who were just doing it for applause. He actually didn't just tell us what serving looked like, he showed us. In John chapter 13, he had just finished washing the feet of his disciples. And I don't know if you have been a part of a foot washing service before. They're powerful. They're very humbling. I mean, it's one of the most humiliating, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean humbling experiences that you can have, because you're literally taking water and a towel and you are cleaning the feet of another person. And we think it's gross in our context when we have good hygiene and running water and we have socks and shoes. In Jesus' day, it was muck and mud and animal poo and everything else all rolled into one. And he's washing his disciples' feet. He had just completed this, and he tells them in John chapter 13, he says, "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, because that's what I am. Now that I your Lord and teacher have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. Now, if we wanted to read this just as it is what it is, just take it at face value, then we should wash one another's feet. But I kind of think Jesus was talking about the heart behind it more than the actual washing of feet. Is there a place for that? Yeah. I can tell you some of the experiences that I've had in foot washing services took place on short-term mission trips when I was a student pastor, and we had 40 students that went on a trip. And at the end of the week, they would come and wash my feet, and I would wash their feet. And it was just powerful. I mean, we ugly cried. I mean, and there was snot everywhere. It was just, it was not pretty, but it was such a holy moment. It was incredible. And I'll treasure those moments for the rest of my life. I'll treasure those times and those experiences, opportunities to pray specifically over each one of those students that came forward, and those students laying their hands on me and praying over me. Like there's something holy about that. So I'm not pushing away from the importance of washing one another's feet, but I don't necessarily think Jesus was specifically meaning that. I think he was talking about the heart of service behind it. Like, look, I've humbled myself. I'm your teacher. I'm your master. I'm your Lord. And what did you just see me do? I humbled myself and I served you. It was kind of this ribbon, this central theme that was woven through the life of Jesus. After all, he showed up on the earth for the express purpose of serving us. This God of all creation stepped into time. This God who is limitless, who is beyond space and time, stepped into space and time for the sole purpose of dying so that we could have a relationship with him. That was the heart that Jesus was explaining here. He's like, look, you just saw me wash your feet. He continues in verses 15 through 17. He says, I've set you an example. I've made an example for you to look at, not just to hear me talk about in nature, not just to hear me speak in uncertain terms, but I have physically shown you what this looked like. I have set you an example that you should do as I've done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Now that you know that service isn't just a good idea, but it's actually central to the life of a follower of Jesus, you'll be blessed if you do them. You will be blessed if you put yourself in a posture of serving. Because when you're serving and you're giving and you're doing it from the right heart and the right spirit, there's something liberating about it. Eugene Peterson says it this way in his book, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. A servant Christian is the freest person on earth. A servant Christian is the freest person on earth. Why is it the freest person on earth? We're free to proclaim the gospel of Jesus. Maybe that serving isn't being on stage and preaching a sermon. Maybe it's not being on stage and playing an instrument or singing. Maybe it's not leading a children's ministry environment. But whatever serving that we do, it's an opportunity for us to be free to express the gospel of Jesus, to make Jesus famous. Whatever you do, whether it's in word or it's in deed, do it all as if you're doing it to Jesus. And when you do that, and when I do that, he's made famous. The spotlight isn't about how bright it can shine on me. It's about how bright I can make it shine on him. Here's what's going to happen. When we serve from a place of authenticity, from a place of humility, from a place of just truth, people are going to ask questions. They're going to ask questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And it's in that moment that we can share the good news of Jesus. I'm doing this because of what Jesus has done for me. I'm doing this because Jesus served me by dying on a cross. And this is my reasonable response. This is my reasonable service to him. And we have an opportunity to strike up a conversation and tell the world, tell our world, who this Jesus is. At the core of everything we do at Level 13, connecting with God and with one another, worship and serving. Those are three things that I want us to be known for. Those are three things, those are three non-negotiables that I want the world, when they look at Level 13 Church, for them to think, to see, and to know unequivocally that, man, those people are about connecting people to Jesus. They're about connecting inside of groups and in relationship with one another. They're about worship. And they're about serving. And if we do those three things, then what they will know about Level 13 Church is they're about Jesus. And that is the goal. That is what we're after. We want every person that drives by this property, every person that walks through those doors, every person that joins us online to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this place, they are about Jesus. And that the people that call this place home, they're about Jesus. And they can't wait to tell one more person about Jesus. They can't wait to share the good news of Jesus with somebody else. They can't wait to be the hands and feet of Jesus. That's what they're after. That's who they are. That is their identity. That is their DNA. That is at the core of who they are. That's what I want more than anything else. If they never know the name of the pastor at Level 13 Church, I'm fine with that. But if they know the name Jesus, man, can I just tell you, we've been successful at the mission that we've been called to. If they know Jesus, if they know that this is a place where they can come and they can hear the truth, they can hear the gospel, that they can have an opportunity to connect with God in a real way. They can have an opportunity to fight battles through worship. They can have an opportunity to put the gifts that God has placed inside of them to work by serving others. We've been successful. We've accomplished what God's called us to do. So this morning, the question that I have for you: how connected are you? How connected to God and to some other people in this place? Because it's easy in a church our size to walk in and walk out and not build any relationships. That's easy. It requires some vulnerability. It requires stepping outside of our comfort zones a little bit to be known and to be connected, but it's important. Why do you worship? Is it because we've got a killer band of musicians and we've got just a huge number of people who come on stage and can rotate? And I'll be the first to say this. This is the most talented group of musicians and singers that I've ever had the honor of serving with. They are gifted. but I'm not coming for a show. If I wanted to catch a show, I could go catch several of them at shows because they play at different places. They're that good. If I want to go to a show, I can go to a show. That's not why I come here. I come here to fight battles. I come to worship the God who gives me breath and life. Are you serving anywhere? Or are you a consumer Christian who just comes in and pops down in the chair and says, feed me, give me, feed me, give me, feed me, give me, but never puts back? That's a hard question, Heath. I know. And I mean it. There are ways we can serve. God's gifted us. He's called us. He's anointed us to do things for His glory and make His name famous. Man, we need to be about it. There is a world around us who needs the good news of Jesus Christ. And maybe your serving could make a difference. I want you to wrestle with those questions today. I'm not here to make you feel bad or hurt your feelings. But if I don't share the truth, then I'm not honoring God and the call that He's placed on my life. And so if I've offended you, I'm sorry that you got offended, but I'm not sorry for what I said, because it's what we need to hear. It's time. It's time that we grow up, that we mature into fully devoted followers of Jesus who are connecting and worshiping and serving and making a difference in this place, in our community, and in our world. It's time. It's time. Apart from Jesus washing the feet of His disciples, one of the greatest examples He gave us was as He took communion, what we call communion, the Lord's Supper, for the final time. And He presented to His disciples, He said, this bread that's being broken before you, this is my body. I want you to take this and eat it. And every time you do, I want you to remember me. And after the meal, He took the cup and He said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. And every time that you partake of this, I want you to remember me. He portrayed the sacrifice He was about to walk into, the service that He was about to enter into, by brutally being beaten and murdered. But there was hope coming. And this morning, as we gather together, we're going to share in Holy Communion together. And while you come, I want you to think about those three questions. I want you to think, hey, am I connected? Am I worshiping? Am I serving? And as you take the bread and you take the cup, I want to ask you, I want to encourage you to ask the Holy Spirit to illuminate what's inside, to reveal those things that maybe we've locked away in a closet or we've ignored for a little while. Ask Him to illuminate those things so we can see who we are and where we are. The band's going to come and they're going to play one final song. And it's a declaration that we will serve. We will make a difference. We will be about the work of the gospel. It's called We Will. We've done it a couple of times before. And as you come and as you're thinking through these things and as you're praying, let this be Let this be a mantra. Let this be kind of a battle cry. Let this be a rallying cry for us as a church family. Father, in Jesus' name, as we move forward to partake of communion today together, God, would you help us to examine ourselves, God, and see if we are doing and serving, connecting, worshiping in a way that brings glory to your name, in a way that makes you famous. God, if there are areas in our lives where we failed, in areas in our lives where we haven't measured up, rather than feeling condemnation, let us come in humility and in sincerity and surrender our hearts and our lives and our minds to you for your glory and for your good name. To partake of communion this morning, you don't have to be a member at Level 13. This is an open table. Here we take communion by intinction. You take a piece of bread and dip it in the cup and you take. You may serve yourself, but as you serve yourself, remember the broken body, the shed blood of Jesus, as he serves us so that we can go and serve him and make him known.